And welcome back once again, options traders. And I thought this would be a great time to talk about a really important topic, and that is what's most important about market forecasts. And I thought this was an important topic because now during the pandemic, investors are paying really close attention to things like this. Retail sales declined by 1.1% in November versus 0.3% expected. And they say, oh my gosh, it really missed expectations. The economy's coming unraveled. I need to go make big changes to my portfolio. And the reason that people pay attention and really misinterpret headlines like this is because of a concept called the wisdom of crowds, which I've talked about in previous videos. And there's a lot of mathematical merit to it. And the idea here is that if you ask a large crowd of people, the average guess will be close to the actual answer, the target, the truth, the thing that you're trying to get at. And the reason that this concept works is that you're going to get some people who are just naturally going to guess way out in left field, let's say way low, and some people will guess way out in right field, way high, but they tend to cancel out when you're looking at these averages. And so the averages tend to gravitate towards the center, towards the truth. So that's the concept of the wisdom of crowds, but you have to understand there are conditions. There are conditions under which it works, and there are conditions under which it doesn't work. So let's start off with the second one here. Where doesn't it work? Well, the whole concept of the wisdom of crowds is not going to work when there are questions where nobody knows the answer. So for example, let's say that we take a box and I'm going to take a deck of cards and draw an ace from it, throw it into the box, seal it up so nobody can see it, and I'm going to pose a question. Do you think it's the ace of diamonds, clubs, hearts, or spades? 4 answers, A, B, C, D. What do you think? Well, it's a question to which nobody could possibly know the answer. So what we would expect to get is kind of an even distribution. Roughly a quarter of the people will be choosing different answers. Now that doesn't mean that they're not using some type of deep analytical ways to come up with an answer. It's just meaningless. But the point is that everybody could have it. And there's no reason that they should lean towards one answer or the other. So we would expect these bars to all be about equally high. Now, as a side note, yeah, if it turns out that we picked the one that has the highest bar and it turns out to be correct, that's just by chance. But can you see how there's not any of these bars that really stands out? And that's what you would expect when you're asking questions to which nobody knows the answer. So where does it work? Where does this idea of the wisdom of crowds actually work? Well, it will work when there is a question that some of the crowd knows. And what will happen is that the remaining people who are guessing will have their answers evenly distributed, just like we just saw. And that's what makes the one bar stand out. So for instance, let's say that I ask a question, who starred in the movie Captain Phillips? And I give you 4 choices. We have Robert De Niro, Tom Hanks, Matt Damon, and Matthew McConaughey. Well, the answer is Tom Hanks. But as long as we have some of the people who know, and it doesn't have to be a large percentage, but let's say it's just 20% of the surveyed group here that knows. The key point to observe is that 100% of them are going to answer B. So even though they only make up 20% of the crowd, they all answer the same way. What happens to the remaining 80%? They get their answers distributed evenly among the 4 answers like we just saw. So we would expect the people who don't know the answer to again have about the same height to their bars, such as these in red, like we saw for the card question. But do you see how when you have even if it's a small portion, in this case the portion of the green bar, that's what really makes answer B stand out. It's not because everybody knew, and it's not because a large portion of the crowd knew. That's the misinterpretation of the wisdom of crowds. It's just the fact that some of the people know, or at least can get you somewhat close. And then the rest of the people have those errors just cancel out. So when you're looking at news items and these surveys, what is it that you want to notice? Well, the valuable information isn't in the prediction itself. The value is in the direction. That can give you some insights. Is it up or down? But you also have to ask yourself, how much variation could there be in the answers? Because the risk is in that variation. So let's say that they survey a bunch of analysts who are following Microsoft. You're going to find that they all have a pretty good idea of what next quarter's earnings are going to be. And if you look it up, you'll see that all of the analysts are off by just a penny or two. They all have a pretty good idea. So even though that nobody knows the answer, there's a fairly small variation among the answers. So even in those cases, don't get too worked up about by how much it was over or below the expectations. Was it going to be higher than, let's say, last quarter or lower? That's really what you want to focus on. Now, if it's a question to where there could be tremendous variation, such as in what do you think retail sales will be, then there's even less reason to overreact to the information. So even though economists might have some kind of an idea, I mean, we know it's not going to be down 100% or up 75%, they have some idea, but there's a tremendous amount of variation. That's what you have to notice. So in news articles like that, don't overreact just because it missed or beat the expectations. Pay more attention to the direction. Were retail sales up or were they down? And also understand there's a tremendous amount of variation. So as investors, always remember that it's better to keep focused on your long-term goals, and that's always easiest to do by hedging your positions, which I always talk about is the best to do with options. And by hedging your positions, that removes the risk and the fear. So don't make changes to your positions just because of a survey or a forecast, especially when they're answering questions to which nobody knows the answer. If you'd like to learn more about the arts and science of options trading, please check out the Alpha Trader course and Strategy Lab at optionsatoz.com. Also, please join us on the Facebook trading group, Options A to Z, and you can find a link in the description below.